Today in Canadian history for April 15th, I'm Mark Affeld. The Bergen-Belsen concentration camp located in northwestern Germany was liberated by British and Canadian troops on this day back in 1945. The concentration camp had been in existence since 1942. Anne Frank and her sister Margot were among the camp's approximately 50,000 prisoners to have died there. Now, the legacy of the Holocaust has left a significant mark on the face of Canada's history. In the years following the Second World War, Montreal became home to the world's third largest population of Holocaust survivors, third only to Israel and New York. For more information, I spoke with Sabrina Moisan, the education coordinator at the Montreal Holocaust Memorial Centre. Sabrina is also a historian. She obtained her PhD from the Université de Montréal. Sabrina, could you tell our listeners a little something about the Holocaust survivors who came to Montreal?
They arrived, most of them, very, very few Jews arrived during the war, you know that. And the doors of Canada were closed to immigration in general, but specifically for Jews. So after the war, Canada changed its immigration policy to allow more immigrants to come. Well, they created this new law about refugees, and so all the Jews who were in the displaced person camps, not all of them, of course, but some of them could ask to come to Canada, and it was much easier at that time. But then they had nothing. They had no family, no money, and someone had to take care of them here. And the Canadian Jewish Congress engaged itself to take care of these persons. So the community in Montreal was very much involved in offering like rooms, jobs, money to these persons. That was the engagement. But of course, we hear that very often in the testimonies of the survivors that they don't feel like they were so well welcomed. Because, of course, it was hard and there were tensions. It's new people coming, and that's just normal human reaction. But they arrived mainly so with their European background. They came to Montreal mainly, but they were also going to Toronto.
The Montreal Holocaust Memorial Centre has the important role of educating young Canadians about the atrocities of the Holocaust. Sabrina, I'm curious, what sort of methods do you use to teach young Canadians about something of such magnitude as the Holocaust?
At the moment, we are working on a tool which will present the Canadian intervention or non-intervention during the Holocaust. It's a tool we developed for older students of high school, for students like 17 years old. So it's a reflection on the concept of intervention, and for that we will present two cases of genocide. So we will talk about the Holocaust. They will learn about the history, what and how Canada and the Canadians, so not only the state, the government, but also citizens, Canadian organizations, how did they react to what was happening to the Jews in Europe, and why did Canada did nothing? And the question is not to say we are so bad, we have to feel guilty. The question is really to understand why wasn't there more done there.
I think that's great because, especially in terms of young Canadians, I can imagine they're distant, at least in terms of time, to the Holocaust, and it might be easy for them to assume it was sort of Britain, United States, Germany, and maybe Russia who had a stake in it, but no, Canada had a very significant stake in what was happening in Europe at the time.
Exactly, and there were two very important conferences in Canada where Churchill and Roosevelt and Mackenzie King it was in Quebec, Quebec City, and where very important decisions were taken there. And so, of course, there's there's something to say. And we are using Mackenzie King's diary, where he is discussing with himself about the topic, and that's quite interesting because we often present this former prime minister as very anti-Semite, but his thinking is quite more complex than what we usually say.
Today is a day full of Canadian history. On April 15, 1923, drivers in Nova Scotia switched from driving on the left-hand side of the road to driving on the right-hand side of the road. Canada and the United States signed the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement on this day back in 1972, and as always, we aired this episode of Today in Canadian History.
Today in Canadian History is produced by CJSW 90.9 FM. The executive producers are Joe Burima and Mark Affeld. Original music is produced by the Fisk, Fletcher, and May Trio. Our series is not meant to be a definitive source on our past. Instead, we hope that it sparks a desire to learn more about our unique history. For more information on the series or to recommend an event or moment, check out our website at cjsw.com/Today in Canadian History.
And now, it's time for a random piece of Canadiana trivia. Now, are you curious as to how the Nova Scotians just switched from the left-hand side of the road to the right-hand side of the road overnight? Well, beyond newspaper and radio bulletins, it was up to the drivers themselves, obviously, to prevent the crashes. So, once the switch was made, large stickers were placed on the windshield of every vehicle in the province that read, "Keep to the right." What a friendly reminder.